In the quiet village of Zamble, cradled by the rolling golden hills and watched over by ancient baobab trees, life moved to the steady rhythm of tradition. The villagers rose with the sun and retired as it set, their days filled with simplicity and toil. But the arrival of Kofi, a boy born under the rare eclipse, would alter this rhythm forever. Kofi's entrance into the world had been marked by a celestial spectacle. The skies darkened at midday, and the sun glowed red, as if the heavens themselves bore witness to his arrival. The village seer, a woman of whispers and visions, declared him touched by the gods, a vessel of fate and fortune. At first, Kofi's childhood was unremarkable, filled with play, laughter, and the watchful eye of his widowed mother, Abina. But as he grew, the whispers about him began to swell, carried on the winds of Zamble like the songs of distant griots. The revelation of the gift. Kofi's transformation began during the sacred initiation rites of manhood. At 13, he stood with other boys at the edge of the sacred grove, their faces painted with the ochre of courage and their hearts pounding with anticipation. The elder, Nana Obesai, led the ceremony, her voice commanding respect as she chanted ancient incantations. Each boy was given a concoction brewed from the legendary Ndala herb, said to awaken the strength of their ancestors and prepare them for the burdens of manhood. When Kofi drank, the changes were almost immediate. His body seemed to hum with energy, his muscles rippled with newfound strength, and his posture straightened as though the gods themselves had reached into his soul and claimed him as their own. What no one foresaw, however, was the more peculiar aspect of this transformation. By his 17th year, Kofi's reputation had spread across the village, not just for his striking physique, but for an undeniable magnetism that drew every gaze. His chest was broad, his shoulders strong, and his skin glowed with a deep, earthen warmth, as though he had been sculpted by the hands of a master artisan. But the whispers were not just about his beauty. Among the women of the village, stories began to circulate, hushed tales of an unparalleled gift. Those fortunate enough to experience Kofi's affection spoke of nights unlike any they had ever known. The rumors grew louder. Kofi was a man who could last 4 hours in a woman's embrace, his touch leaving them trembling with desire and aching for more. The Queen's allure. At the heart of Zamble's royal compound lived Queen Ayoka, wife of King Munsa. Ayoka's beauty was legendary, her elegance unmatched by any woman in the kingdom. She walked with the grace of a lioness, her every movement commanding attention. Her skin was smooth and luminous, a deep, rich brown that seemed to shimmer in the sun. Her waist curved delicately, accentuating hips that swayed like the rhythm of a ceremonial drum. Her eyes, almond-shaped and lined with kohl, could pierce the strongest man's resolve, and her voice carried the warmth of honey with the authority of a queen. Men across Zamble had dreamed of Ayoka, but she belonged to the king, a man known for his power and pride. Yet, despite her elevated status, even Ayoka was not immune to the whispers of Kofi. His name reached her ears one evening as she sat on her royal terrace, listening to the gossip of her handmaidens. For hours, one of them whispered with a giggle, her cheeks flushing. "Impossible," Ayoka said with a smirk, though a flicker of curiosity danced in her eyes. That night, Ayoka could not sleep. The tales of Kofi consumed her thoughts, igniting a fire within her that she had not felt in years. She resolved to see this young man for herself. The Festival of Drums. The opportunity arose during the Festival of Drums, a celebration of music, dance, and unity. Kofi, now 21, was the center of attention. His lithe yet muscular frame moved with the ease of a panther as he danced among the villagers. His laughter was infectious, his charm undeniable. Ayoka arrived in her royal carriage, her presence sending ripples of awe through the crowd. Dressed in a flowing gown of gold and crimson, adorned with jewelry that glittered like the stars, she descended gracefully, her every step a proclamation of her unmatched beauty. When her eyes met Kofi's, the air between them seemed to crackle with an unseen energy. Kofi, unaccustomed to feeling nervous, found himself captivated. Ayoka's gaze held him in place, her lips curving into a subtle smile that promised secrets untold. The queen and the commoner. That evening, under the cover of darkness, Ayoka summoned Kofi to the royal gardens. He arrived cautiously, his heart pounding. To stand in the presence of the queen was a privilege few men could claim. Ayoka stepped forward, her scent, a heady blend of jasmine and sandalwood, enveloping him. She studied him, her eyes lingering on the sharp lines of his jaw and the confident set of his shoulders. "They say you are unlike any man," she said, her voice soft yet commanding. "And they say you are the finest of all women," Kofi replied, his voice steady. Their conversation was brief, their connection immediate. What followed was a night that would change the course of Zamble's history. Kofi's legendary endurance met Ayoka's unparalleled allure, and their union was nothing short of electric. Ayoka, a woman accustomed to control, found herself undone by the young man's passion. The consequences. The weeks that followed were filled with chaos. Women throughout Zamble began to bear Kofi's children, their bellies swelling with the proof of their encounters. Among them was Queen Ayoka, her secret threatening to unravel the fragile peace of the kingdom. The king, suspicious of his wife's newfound glow, began to investigate. Meanwhile, the men of the village, overcome with jealousy, plotted to bring Kofi down. The consequences of Kofi's growing legacy. The seeds of scandal. The village of Zamble was no stranger to gossip. News traveled faster than the beating drums, and whispers of Kofi's prowess had long since become the most popular subject of conversation. But as weeks turned into months, these whispers turned to shock and scandal. One by one, women began to show the signs of pregnancy, swollen bellies and radiant faces that could not hide their secrets. At first, it was the wives of farmers, then the daughters of merchants, and finally, to everyone's disbelief, Queen Ayoka herself. The queen's pregnancy was a matter of public celebration, for King Munsa had long hoped for an heir. Yet, beneath the surface, Ayoka's secret burned like a smoldering ember. She knew the child she carried was not her husband's, and the weight of that truth threatened to undo her. Kofi, unaware of the storm brewing, continued to live as he always had, confident, carefree, and seemingly invincible. But the men of the village had grown restless. Their jealousy, once tempered by admiration, had turned into resentment. The meeting of the men. It was on a moonless night that the men of Zamble gathered beneath the great baobab tree. There were farmers, hunters, and even a few of the king's guards among them. Their leader was Kojo, a blacksmith whose wife had recently given birth to a son with Kofi's unmistakable features. "This cannot go on," Kojo said, his voice sharp as the blades he forged. "Our wives, our daughters, they belong to us. And yet, this boy walks among us, sowing chaos and shame." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "What would you have us do?" asked Tund, a fisherman known for his temper. "We must confront him," Kojo replied. "He has taken too much. If the king finds out, it will not just be Kofi who suffers. It will be all of us." The men agreed to act, but their plans were divided. Some wanted to banish Kofi, while others whispered of darker solutions. The king's suspicion. Meanwhile, in the royal palace, King Munsa began to grow suspicious of Ayoka's behavior. She was distant, her usual sharp wit dulled by an uncharacteristic quiet. At night, she held her growing belly as if shielding it from the world. "Something troubles you," Munsa said one evening, his voice gentle but firm. Ayoka forced a smile. "It is only the weight of the child, my king. I dream of the day I will present you with an heir." But Munsa was not convinced. He called upon his most trusted advisor, Afua, an elder woman known for her insight and discretion. "Watch the queen," he instructed, "and find out if there is more to this pregnancy than meets the eye." Kofi's awakening. For the first time in his life, Kofi began to feel the weight of his actions. The women who once sought him out now avoided his gaze, their laughter replaced by worried whispers. Even his own mother, Abina, looked at him with a mixture of pride and concern. "Kofi," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. "You are a man now, but you must think like one. A man's strength is not just in his body, but in his choices." Her words lingered in Kofi's mind, but he dismissed them. He believed himself untouchable, a favored child of the gods. The confrontation. The men's plans came to fruition during the annual harvest festival, a time of celebration and abundance. Kofi, as usual, was at the center of attention, his laughter echoing above the drumbeats. But this time, the mood was different. The men approached him in a group, their faces set with determination. "Kofi," Kojo began, his voice loud enough to silence the crowd. "You have taken what is not yours. You have dishonored us." Kofi stood tall, his expression calm. "I have taken nothing that was not freely given," he replied. A murmur spread through the crowd. The women, many of whom had shared Kofi's bed, avoided eye contact, their faces flushed with shame. "You think yourself above the laws of men," Kojo continued. "But even you cannot escape the wrath of the king." At that moment, a royal messenger arrived, his presence commanding immediate attention. "The king summons Kofi to the palace," the messenger announced. The trial. Kofi stood before King Munsa, his heart pounding in his chest. The queen sat beside the king, her face a mask of composure, though her hands trembled in her lap. "Kofi," Munsa said, his voice as cold as the steel of Kojo's blades. "I have heard troubling things about you. Women swollen with child, families torn apart. All because of you." Kofi opened his mouth to speak, but the king raised a hand. "You will tell me the truth," Munsa continued. "And if I find that you have defiled my queen, you will not leave this palace alive." The room fell silent. Ayoka's breath caught in her throat, and for the first time, Kofi felt fear. The revelation. As the tension reached its peak, Ayoka rose to her feet. "Enough," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. The room turned to her, the king's eyes narrowing. "I carry Kofi's child," she confessed. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The king's face twisted with rage, and his hand went to the hilt of his sword. "You have betrayed me," Munsa spat, his voice a mixture of fury and heartbreak. But before he could act, Nana Obesai, the elder, stepped forward. "My king," she said, her voice commanding attention. "This is no ordinary man. Kofi's gifts come from the gods themselves. Perhaps his actions, though reckless, were meant to teach us something. The legacy. The king, though reluctant, spared Kofi's life, exiling him instead to the distant mountains. But Kofi's legacy could not be erased. The children born of his unions carried his strength, his charm, and his unyielding spirit. Over time, they grew into leaders, healers, and warriors who reshaped the destiny of Zambul. Consequences of Kofi's growing legacy. The exile begins. Kofi's exile was swift and merciless. He was stripped of his place in the village, escorted by armed guards to the base of the distant Kalanji Mountains, a place known for its isolation and danger. The villagers, gathered to witness his departure, were divided in their feelings. The women wept openly, some clutching their swollen bellies, while the men stood stoic, their relief tempered by a lingering sense of unease. As Kofi stood at the edge of the village, his mother, Abina, approached him one last time. Her eyes, filled with tears, bore into his. "My son," she whispered, "you are a child of the gods, but even gods face trials. Out there, beyond the mountains, you must find who you are meant to be." Kofi nodded, unable to speak. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of loneliness settle on his shoulders. The life of exile. The Kalanji Mountains were as beautiful as they were unforgiving. Towering peaks stretched toward the heavens, their rocky faces etched with the scars of time. The air was crisp, the silence broken only by the occasional cry of an eagle or the rustle of wind through the trees. For weeks, Kofi wandered, his body enduring the harshness of the wilderness. His once proud demeanor was slowly replaced by a quieter strength, tempered by solitude and reflection. He built a shelter from fallen branches and leaves, hunted game with tools fashioned from stone, and learned to listen to the rhythms of the land. But the nights were the hardest. Alone beneath the vast canopy of stars, Kofi's mind turned to the life he had left behind. He thought of the women he had loved and the children he would never know. He thought of Queen Ayoka, whose bold confession had both saved and condemned him. The Queen's Dilemma. Back in Zambul, Queen Ayoka's position grew increasingly precarious. Her confession had spared Kofi's life, but had unleashed a storm of turmoil within the palace. King Munsa, though outwardly composed, had become colder and more distant, his once gentle words now edged with bitterness. The queen, now visibly pregnant, found herself shunned by the court. Her maids whispered behind her back, and the noble women avoided her gaze during gatherings. Yet, Ayoka held her head high, determined to protect the child growing within her. One night, as she lay awake in her chambers, she heard a soft knock at her door. It was Afua, the king's trusted advisor. "My queen," Afua said, stepping inside. "The king plans to send you away once the child is born." Ayoka's breath caught in her throat. "You would exile me?" Afua nodded. "He believes it is the only way to restore his honor. But there may be another way." "What do you mean?" Ayoka asked, her voice a mixture of hope and suspicion. "Your child is special," Afua said. "Born of a man touched by the gods. This child could unify the village, perhaps even the entire kingdom. But only if you act now. Leave Zambul before the king can carry out his plan. Find Kofi. Together, you may forge a new path. The journey to reunion." Ayoka, driven by a fierce determination, disguised herself as a commoner and fled the palace under the cover of darkness. With only a small bag of provisions and the guidance of Afua's wisdom, she embarked on the treacherous journey to the Kalanji Mountains. The journey tested her in ways she had never imagined. She braved raging rivers, climbed steep cliffs, and endured nights of freezing cold. Her once delicate hands became calloused, her royal garments replaced by simple robes. But through it all, she pressed on, her heart guided by the faint hope of finding Kofi. The king's wrath. When King Munsa discovered Ayoka's disappearance, his fury was unmatched. He summoned his guards, ordering them to search every corner of the land. "She will not escape me," he vowed, "and neither will Kofi." The king's obsession grew darker, his mind consumed by thoughts of revenge. He began to question even his closest advisors, suspecting betrayal at every turn. The once respected ruler of Zambul now seemed a shadow of himself, driven by the twin demons of pride and humiliation. A new beginning. After weeks of travel, Ayoka finally reached the Kalanji Mountains. Her strength was nearly spent, her body weary from the journey, but the sight of Kofi's makeshift shelter renewed her resolve. Kofi, emerging from the forest with a bundle of firewood, froze at the sight of her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ayoka stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. "I couldn't stay," she said simply. Kofi dropped the firewood and rushed to her, his arms wrapping around her in an embrace that spoke of both love and regret. For the first time in months, he felt whole. The rise of a new kingdom. Together, Kofi and Ayoka began to build a life in the mountains. Ayoka gave birth to a son, whom they named Kwame, a child of extraordinary strength and wisdom even in infancy. Word of their life in exile began to spread, drawing others who felt disillusioned by the rigid traditions of Zambul. Over time, a new community formed, one that valued equality, love, and freedom over strict adherence to the old ways. Kofi, once seen as a symbol of chaos, became a leader, guiding his people with the wisdom he had gained through his trials. The final confrontation. Years later, King Munsa, now old and frail, launched one final attempt to reclaim his honor. Leading an army into the Kalanji Mountains, he sought to destroy what Kofi had built. But when he arrived, he was met not with resistance, but with an invitation. Kofi and Ayoka welcomed him into their home, offering him food and shelter. The king, humbled by their generosity, realized the futility of his anger. In the end, Munsa returned to Zambul, leaving Kofi and Ayoka to thrive in peace. Their story became a legend, told across generations as a testament to the power of love, resilience, and redemption. Story alert: The Prophecy of Kofi's Children, an African tale of unity and betrayal. In the heart of Zambal, whispers of Kofi's offspring rippled like waves on a restless sea. His children, born of many mothers, were now scattered across the land. Some revered as gifts from the gods, others despised as symbols of shame. Yet, a prophecy lingered in the air, revealed by Nana Obesai, the village oracle. The children of the enchanter shall rise, scattered as the stars, bound by the skies. One will lead, one will betray, one will rebuild, and one will slay. The words spread like wildfire, igniting hope in some hearts and fear in others. Who were these children, and what destiny awaited them? Kwame awoke with a start, drenched in sweat. The dream was vivid, an image of his father, standing atop a mountain, surrounded by stars that flickered like flames. Each star descended, taking the shape of a person. "You must gather them," his father's voice echoed. For years, Kwame had avoided thoughts of his father. Raised by his mother, Queen Ayoka, he had grown into a man of strength and wisdom. Yet, he knew the weight of his lineage, a blessing and a curse that followed him like a shadow. Now, the dream was clear. His siblings were out there, scattered and unknown, and it was his responsibility to find them. Amma, the hunter, deep in the forest bordering Zambal, Amma crouched low, her bow drawn. She was tracking a kudu, her movements as silent as a whisper. At 22, she was the best hunter in her village, a skill she had honed to perfection. But Amma carried a bitterness in her heart. Her mother, once a respected woman, had been cast out when Amma's parentage became known. A child of shame, the villagers had called her, and Amma grew up fighting to prove her worth. When Kwame arrived, his presence was met with hostility. Amma, bow in hand, eyed him warily. "You have your father's eyes," she said coldly. "That doesn't mean I trust you." Kwame spoke calmly, his tone firm. "I didn't come to fight. I came because we are stronger together. There's a prophecy." "Spare me your prophecies," Amma interrupted. "I don't need a family. I've done fine on my own." But Kwame persisted, and when he saved Amma from a rogue lion later that night, she grudgingly agreed to hear him out. Kojo, the warrior. In the blacksmith's forge, Kojo hammered away at molten steel, his muscles rippling with every strike. He was known for his strength, a trait that had earned him respect in his village. Yet, Kojo carried a deep anger, directed at the man he had never met. When Kwame and Amma found him, Kojo was less than welcoming. "So, the son of the great Kofi has come to preach unity?" Kojo sneered. "Save your breath. I've built a life without him, and I don't need you." Kwame stood his ground. "This isn't about our father. It's about us, about what we can achieve together." Kojo laughed bitterly. "What can we achieve, Kwame? More women to ruin? More children to abandon?" It wasn't until Amma challenged him to a duel, and won, that Kojo reluctantly joined their group. ESI, the healer. ESI was tending to an injured child when the group arrived at her village. Her touch was gentle, her voice soothing, and the child's cries subsided under her care. Unlike Amma and Kojo, ESI greeted Kwame with warmth. "I've been expecting you," she said, her smile kind. "You have?" Kwame asked, surprised. ESI nodded. "The oracle told me this day would come. I've seen it in my dreams too. Our journey won't be easy, but I believe it is necessary." Her presence brought a sense of calm to the group, though Amma remained skeptical, and Kojo kept his distance. Nana, the schemer. The final sibling, Nana, was not so easily found. Rumors of a cunning man with a silver tongue led the group to a bustling trade town. There, Nana was holding court, charming merchants out of their goods with a mix of wit and deception. When Kwame approached him, Nana smirked. "Ah, the golden child. Let me guess. You want me to join your noble quest?" "Yes," Kwame replied, "because whether you admit it or not, this involves you too." Nana leaned back, his eyes glinting with amusement. "And what's in it for me?" "Purpose," Kwame said simply. Nana laughed, but didn't refuse outright. Later that night, as he packed his belongings, his expression darkened. He had no intention of playing by Kwame's rules. The journey begins. With the siblings united, the journey to fulfill the prophecy began. But unity proved elusive. Amma and Kojo clashed constantly, their fiery tempers sparking arguments over every decision. Nana sowed seeds of discord, subtly manipulating the group for his own gain. Kwame struggled to lead, his patience tested by his siblings' mistrust. Only ESI acted as a mediator, her quiet wisdom keeping the group from falling apart. Their first trial came in the Forest of Echoes, a place said to reveal one's deepest fears. Each sibling faced a vision that forced them to confront their insecurities. Kwame saw himself failing as a leader, the weight of his siblings' lives crushing him. Amma relived the shame of her childhood, hearing the villagers' cruel taunts. Kojo saw himself consumed by his anger, destroying everything he loved. ESI saw a future where her efforts to heal were in vain, her siblings lost to violence. Nana saw his ambition leading to betrayal, leaving him utterly alone. Emerging from the forest, the siblings were shaken but more aware of their shared burdens. The Village of Shadows. The siblings arrived at Chika Village, a once thriving settlement, now eerily silent. Homes stood abandoned, their walls blackened with soot, and the air carried a stench of decay. "What happened here?" Amma whispered, her bow drawn as she scanned the desolate streets. Kwame's face was grim. "Our father happened." They soon discovered the truth from a lone survivor, an elderly man named Okoro, who emerged from the ruins. Okoro told them how Kofi's charm had once seduced the village's most revered woman, a priestess dedicated to the gods. The affair had broken sacred vows, and when the priestess bore a child, the gods unleashed their wrath upon the village, cursing it with drought and disease. "You are his children," Okoro spat, his frail body trembling with anger. "You carry his blood, his shame. You should not be here." The siblings were shaken, but Kwame stood firm. "We are not our father. We've come to make amends." "How?" Okoro demanded. "The gods cannot be appeased." It was ESI who stepped forward, her voice soft but resolute. "Perhaps not with words, but with actions. Let us restore what was lost." The siblings spent weeks rebuilding Chika Village. Kwame organized the villagers, rallying them with his leadership. Amma hunted game to feed the hungry, her skills proving invaluable. Kojo repaired homes and forged tools, his strength a beacon of hope. ESI tended to the sick, her healing touch mending both bodies and spirits. Nana, reluctantly at first, used his cunning to broker trade deals, bringing much-needed supplies. As they worked, tensions began to ease. Amma and Kojo developed a grudging respect for each other, while Nana, despite his initial reluctance, started to feel a sense of belonging. One night, under the light of a full moon, the siblings gathered around a fire. "Maybe we're not so different after all," Amma said, breaking the silence. Kwame smiled. "We are stronger together." For the first time, they felt like a family. But not all was well. Nana's ambitions simmered beneath the surface. While his siblings toiled for the village, he secretly met with Chief Weeksa, a rival leader seeking to expand his territory. "The village is weak," Nana told Weeksa, "but my siblings are strong. If you spare me, I can help you defeat them." Weeksa agreed, and Nana led his siblings into an ambush. The attack was swift and brutal. Kwame fought valiantly, rallying the villagers to defend themselves. Amma and Kojo held the line, their combined strength turning the tide of the battle. ESI, despite her gentle nature, used her knowledge of herbs to craft smoke bombs, blinding the enemy. But in the chaos, Nana's betrayal was revealed. "You sold us out," Amma screamed, her eyes blazing with fury. Nana sneered. "I did what I had to. This prophecy is a chain, and I refuse to be bound by it." Kwame, wounded but standing tall, confronted Nana. "You've made your choice. Now live with it." As the battle ended, Weeks' forces were defeated, but the village paid a heavy price. Many lives were lost, and the bond between the siblings was shattered. Nana fled into the night, leaving behind only bitterness and betrayal. With Chika village safe but broken, the siblings pressed on, their journey now marked by loss and distrust. They found refuge in the ruins of Zamble, where Nana Obesai awaited them. The prophecy is nearing its end, the oracle said, but the path ahead is treacherous. The final trial came in the form of a powerful storm that ravaged the land, a manifestation of the god's wrath. The siblings were forced to confront their darkest truths. Kwame admitted his fear of failure, realizing that leadership meant embracing both strength and vulnerability. Amma forgave herself for her mother's shame, understanding that her worth was not defined by others. Kojo let go of his anger, choosing love and unity over vengeance. ESI, already at peace with herself, became the anchor that held the group together. But Nana, consumed by his greed, sought to harness the storm's power for himself. In a climactic confrontation, he unleashed chaos, forcing his siblings to stop him. It was ESI who made the ultimate sacrifice, using her life force to calm the storm and protect her family. As she lay dying, she whispered, "We are stronger together." Never forget that. The surviving siblings returned to Chika village, their bond stronger than ever. Together, they rebuilt the village, transforming it into a symbol of hope and unity. Kwame, now a wise and respected leader, honored ESI's memory by establishing a healing center in her name. Amma became a protector of the land, ensuring that no one suffered as her family once had. Kojo, embracing his role as a builder, helped forge a brighter future for the village. As for Nana, he wandered the land, haunted by his choices. Though he sought redemption, he knew that his betrayal would never be forgotten. The prophecy was fulfilled, but its true meaning lay not in destiny, but in the choices they made. The children of Kofi had forged their own paths, proving that even in the shadow of a flawed legacy, greatness could rise. Let me know below the comment section what your moral lesson was from this video. And thanks for watching this video, and also subscribe to this channel. Turn on the notification to get notified for new released videos.